Welcome to the Women's Motorsports Network podcast, the show that puts the spotlight on the incredible women who fuel the world of motorsports. From drivers to crew members, engineers to fans, and everyone in between, we're here to celebrate the trailblazers, dreamers, and doers shaping the sport we love. Each episode, we share inspiring stories of females of all ages from every corner of the motorsports universe, past, present, and future. It's a journey through the seasons of life filled with heartfelt moments, laughter, and a whole lot of horsepower. So, whether you're a lifelong fan, a racer yourself, or simply curious about the extraordinary women behind the wheel, settle in, relax, and enjoy a fun and uplifting ride with us. This is the Women's Motorsports Network podcast, connecting and celebrating women in motorsports, one story at a time. Let's hit the track. Hello, everyone. This is Melinda Russell with the Women's Motorsports Network podcast. And today, my guest is Veronica McCann. Hopefully, I said that right, Veronica. And if not, you can straighten me out in a little bit. Veronica is joining us today. I'm happy to have you on the show. So, would you first start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Veronica. I am actually from Perth in Western Australia. Right now, though, I am based out of Tennessee because I'm over here doing a little bit of racing, some dirt track racing. My background is all dirt track, all in Australia, a little bit of overseas racing. Yeah.
Awesome. And did you race dirt in Australia? Is that how you ended up coming over here, or is this something new for you?
No, so my whole background, I started racing when I was 9 years old, so many years ago now. My all dirt track racing, so all speedway, oval track. I came over to the US in my early 20s and tried to make a bit of a swap over to asphalt racing, so moving into paved ovals. And then I went back to Australia again, continued on with dirt track racing. So that was, to summarize it, it's through junior categories, then moving into a senior category, I stepped into sprint car racing, and it's sprint car racing that ultimately led me over here to the US, just to follow the path of some other guys that have done it prior to me doing it. And yeah, I still race dirt track in Australia, and it's super cold at home now. So, and it's nice and warm over here. So I've got a car owner over here who reached out to me last year, and yeah, we just decided to put a little bit of a holiday together for me. And a little bit of a program together, and I've just done my 5th week racing over here in the US, and I'll head home shortly.
Okay. I was going to ask you how much longer were you going to get to be here?
One more week,
Oh, so you're almost done. Almost time to go home.
almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Unfortunately.
now, when you go back home, will it be how soon will it be race season there? For it'll be a while yet.
No, so I'll get home mid-September, and then our actual racing season starts 2nd week in October. But prior to that, we've got a rebuild to do on. So I own my own dirt late model team in Australia, and we've got a little bit of work to do on that prior to the season starting. New colours and wrap and rebuild of the car, which isn't a massive rebuild this off season. And then we've got some media stuff to do, a bit of a media day, a launch as a part of the series that I compete in. That's all prior to the season starting. So when I get home, it's going to be busy.
Yeah. It sounds like it's going to be busy, busy. And I always laugh
Yeah,
because people who are not in motorsports talk about the off season, and there really is never an off season. It's if you're
no,
not racing, you're doing other things. It's continuous for sure. Yeah. So
correct.
tell me about your car. What kind of car is it? How fast does it go? And you're obviously racing for someone. You're racing someone else's car here. and then when you
Yep.
go home. So tell me about both of those cars.
So dirt late model racing, they're if you're not familiar with it, it's an American-based class. They run them regionally and nationally here in the US. We in Australia, we adapted the national rules in Australia. So the national rules that they use here in the US, we use in Australia probably about 20 odd years ago, and the classes are, continuing to grow. It's very strong in my home state. And basically that means that we can load a container with a couple of cars and ship that out to Australia and race the cars as is. So dirt late model racing is what it is. I run a different brand of chassis back home. So I run a rocket chassis. Over here in the US, I'm running, this is a Team Zero car. By the late Scott Bloomquist, who passed away last year, unfortunately. And engine wise, the engine rules are fairly open in the categories. So at home and here it's essentially like an old school push rod carburetor setup. So you can have anything from a CT525 crate engine, which some guys do, and I run back home in Australia, to you can have a 410 cubic inch, 430, 450 wide bore. You can have whatever. So that's the beauty of the class. When it comes down to a track changes over the night, that's where the horsepower aspect kind of gets taken away. So hence why you can kind of have an open engine rule.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It sounds like it's a pretty exciting life that you have. How did you end up, getting into motorsports? Who exposed you to the world of motorsports?
So we blame mum and dad for that. My dad he's a ex motocrosser and enduro rider. So I don't really remember. I was obviously went to the track when I was little, but I don't really remember going there. But I do remember my dad had a fantastic group of friends that he used to race with, and most of the guys there, they had kids that were mine and my brother's age. So we grew up around this amazing group of people, and I felt like if we weren't at a racetrack or watching some form of racing on TV with these other families, we were away camping with those families. So I feel like I had such an awesome childhood that was definitely motorsport related. I've got a brother who's 3 years older than me. He started racing cars. My dad was looking for something for him to get into, and the usual sports sort of didn't fit the bill for him. So, and he kind of took a liking to racing this junior category that was based in New South Wales, in Sydney, New South Wales, which is where I'm originally from. And then at the time, I actually couldn't start racing straight away because there was a starting age limit on it. So I had to wait about a year to be able to do it. And then as soon as I turned 9, my 9th birthday, my presents were, helmet, gloves, race suit. So I was in heaven. So, and I finally got to start racing. So that's where I started. So just kind of grew up around it. I didn't really know any different. My parents certainly got me into other sports, through school, and I was a ballet dancer right through my schooling as well. So it's just that racing cars kind of was the one that I couldn't live without.
Yeah, it gets in your blood. That's what we say about
It does.
the sport. It's you can't deny that for sure. So, is there a specific moment that you remember when you first started racing, even as a little girl, that you knew this was something you were going to do for a long time?
I reckon I was 13 or 14 when I probably was like, okay, I'd actually like to make a career of this. And so I reckon 14 years old, the goal was always to come over to the US and try and race. How you do that as a 14-year-old, the age differences between Australian drivers and US dirt track drivers over here in the US, they start them a fair bit younger. Whereas you know, 14 was quite young for me to probably turn around and go, yeah, I want to race cars, and I really want to give it a shot overseas. So, yeah, I reckon it was the 13, 14 age bracket where I just sort of went, I love this. I don't want to not do it. And, you know, we'll figure out a way to always make it work. And then it's always very different when you hit your, you know, the years where you transition out of a junior category to a senior category. And sometimes the funding from, you know, mum and dad normally fund a junior career for most people. And then when you transition into a senior career and you start having to find funding yourself, and, you know, I was very fortunate with mum and dad. We went into sprint car racing straight from my junior career. And then when I came over to the US, then that's when they decided to, you know, this is back in early 2000s. They decided to, you know, that they were going to sell up because they had, you know, funded my sprint car racing, you know, modestly. So it wasn't, you know, we weren't a super Hollywood team or anything like that. But you know, we had good equipment and some good spares, and that was it. But yeah, when I kind of started coming to the US in early 2000s, yeah, I guess I figured you know, I'm going to have to try and make something of this, and figure out how I can run my own deal, you know, back home in Australia. So, and that's what I ended up doing. I run my own team now, and it's hard work, but it's very exciting.
Was it hard for you to find sponsors coming to the United States where maybe you weren't known very well yet, or it was kind of a learning curve? I'm sure for you to race in the United States somewhat, and then to find sponsors. So, how difficult was that?
Very. My trips in the early 2000s, I was surrounded by a small but very good group of people who assisted me to be able to get my foot in the door. Lynn St. James was a massive mentor for me in the early 2000s. You know, she allowed me to stay in her apartment while I sort of chased this dream. And those kind of things are priceless, right? Because there's a living cost that's then taken away. So I really only needed to, you know, when I was back home in Australia, I was working, and I really only had to try and save up money for food and travel and that while I was over here. And then, you know, I just happened to be in the right place at the right time where we spoke to some people from the IRL, and then that's how I got my foot in the door for Indy Lights, what was Indy Pro at the time. But as far as the searching for sponsorship side of things, I've because I essentially haven't done very much racing in the US. So when I was chasing the pavement deal, you know, we went to a sports management company at the time, and that kind of they had there was another sport that was having a bit of an issue, so they kind of dropped all their other categories at the time. So that was a bit of a letdown, but they were fantastic, you know, with handing me my information and that. But to try and find sponsorship from the other side of the world to do something, you know, on the opposite side is just, it's hard. It's very hard, and motorsport's a very financial sport. It takes a lot of
Hmm.
money to move up. Um, so ultimately, for me, I ended up going back and racing in Australia. So I did another season back home in a sprint car at the time. And then I took a few seasons out personally, you know, because I spent a lot of time going back and forth between America and Western Australia. And I'd raced nonstop from 9 till, let's say, 23 at that stage. So, and not really had a break. So I took some time out when I finished up in the US, and I had a couple of surgeries on my back from a back injury that I'd sustained racing cars. And that was sort of my time to grow up and go, okay, if I'm going to have the surgery on my back, I probably need to be grown up about this and actually take some time out and let myself properly recover for if I do want to get back into it. And then bad thing having time out of the sport, but the good thing is that it lit the fire in me again to want to go back and give it another shot. So that's when I actually started up I think I had about 5 years out of the sport, and just giving my body a fair bit of time to recoup, and then also letting that passion sort of come back, and it came back in a big way, and I started my own team, and ultimately that's led to the opportunity to come over here, and just, it's not for, I'm certainly not making any money from it, but it's just to come out here and have a skid on some dirt tracks. And I tell you, it's been so much fun. I've had an absolute ball over here.
Yeah, so I grew up around asphalt, okay?
Yeah.
There's only one dirt track that I can remember where I grew up, which was in West Central Illinois. And then I moved to
Okay.
Michigan, and it's 99% asphalt. So that's what
Yeah.
I'm used to. But if you've not grown up around it and then you get introduced to it, it's addicting as well, because it's so fun to watch. And the way they slide, and just all the things, the way they take the corners and things, you just have to love it. And I have Flow Racing. Well, I have a bunch of streaming, but Flow Racing, there's nothing good on TV in the summer, and I'm on Flow Racing watching
Yeah.
all kinds of tracks all over the country that I could never go to on a weekly, monthly basis. And
Yeah.
I'm so spoiled that I get to watch all that. And then I come across names like Veronica McCann and different people, and I'm like, wow, that's cool. There's a young woman that's racing, and I love seeing that, for sure. So you'll go back to Australia. You're going to fix your car. Now, what kind of car do you race in Australia?
So the same class, basically, that I'm racing over here. It's just a different brand of chassis,
Okay.
different engine combination as well to what I'm racing over here. So small differences, but essentially same class. And if I essentially could ship my car over here, or this car that I'm running back home, and race it.
Yeah. Okay. And so tell me about your successes and then your frustrations, because one thing we do know is that every night at the track is not a success, unfortunately. And but yet there are nights that are surprisingly successful. So tell me about that part of your journey. What do you do when you have a bad night? And then tell me about some of the successes you've had.
Bad night is always a learning night, unless, I don't know, unless you do something drastically wrong. You try. I think most people who, and I'll say, get to my age and they've been racing for a long time. You don't do it just to make up numbers. You do it because you're competitive. So I still feel very competitive. I feel very competitive at home. Coming over here was an eye opener, and I wasn't oblivious to that. These guys over here get to do so many more laps than what we get to do in Australia. So our season's quite restricted compared to over here. So coming over here is like ass whooping pretty much. Sorry to say that, but it's that they just get so many more laps, and if you can't learn from the experience, then you're probably not doing it right.
Hmm.
Like I know that I'm going to driver than what I came over as, and I feel, like I said before, I feel like I'm competitive at home as it is, across the country, so not just in my state but across the country. uh, I learn from the guys who are better than me all of the time at home. And then what I've learned here in the US, I know I'm going to be able to use those skills and go back home and hopefully be a better driver. But as far as the frustrating stuff, I'm a bit of I do dwell on things, because I'm competitive, and it's incredibly frustrating if you're having multiple races in a row, and then your one before, a week's break is your bad one, because I feel like I dwell on that a whole bunch more, and you can't go and rectify it, right? So if you're racing back to back to back, you have another shot the next night to make up for that. And when you have the bad night on your final night before a break, that's what's tough. Like I struggle with that. Definitely, yes.
Yeah.
Successes, yeah, successes over my career. Like as a junior, I won series championships, track championships, titles, and that's, I guess, what helped me progress straight into the sprint car ranks. I think it was in my second season in a sprint car, I won a track championship at the Perth Motorplex, which was pretty damn cool. I think I'm one of the youngest in the country to do that, which is also pretty damn cool. I think I'd won that at 19. And then we have a very prominent series in Western Australia. The sponsorship of that series changes over the years, so it was called something different when I ran it. But these days, the Maddington Toyota Sprint Car Series, I ran third in that series 3 years in a row, which is all a nice little tick to have on your racing resume. So I've had some decent successes. Have I won a whole bunch of feature races in multiple categories? No, but championship wise, I feel like I've always been, a half decent championship contender. But I'll always credit where credit's due for the guys who can win championships and feature races, and because you can only learn from that. You can
Right.
only learn from them and what they do. So I'm in my, appreciating everything for what it is phase of my racing career. And I'm not doing this to become a professional. I've just turned 42, so I'm not doing it to become a professional. I do it because I absolutely love it. My life has been around it since I was a baby, and I really enjoy doing what I do. And the fact that I've got to come overseas and do this has been pretty special and something I'll always remember.
Yeah, because just going to another country to get that experience, and even like I'm a huge NASCAR fan, so Shane Van Gisbergen, came over,
Yes.
and he, I just love hearing him talk about the things he had to learn that are different. And he was very successful. I'm sure, you're aware of him. He was very
Yeah.
successful, but when he came over here, things are so different. And yet, he's learned so much, and he's progressed so much in the short time that he's been in NASCAR. And then if he went back and started racing again, in New Zealand or where, I'm sure, I thought that's where he came from, but whatever, he would have things to take back with him that those drivers haven't experienced. And that's what you're going to do. You've learned from the banging and bumping, of the American dirt car racing series. And then you'll go back home and you'll have more time under your belt, more experience, and more things that you've learned. That's just going to make you that much better back there. So I bet they're not looking forward to you coming back.
I think I've always said laps are, I call it laps. So laps are so hard to beat. And when there are quite a few Aussies that do come over here, especially in dirt track racing, that come over here in the sprint car ranks, and not so many in the late model ranks that I'm from, but we definitely do have, one or two come over every off season, every Australian off season. They'll come over and get laps over here whilst everyone else is at home, and they've got their cars stripped down, ready for their off-season servicing and prep. And laps are so hard to beat. So I can't say it any better than that.
No, that's true. And we call it seat time. The more seat time you
Yes,
have, that's really what it is. So how do
absolutely.
I've got so many questions. I'm so interested in all
That's
the things
okay.
you're doing. So tell me first, what series and where are you racing here in the States?
So this is the very different thing that I'm not used to. So, and you were just talking about Shane Van Gisbergen and the things that he had to learn so quickly. And it's, I'm telling you, it's not necessarily the things in the car for me. A lot of it, the inside the car part was the most comfortable of my whole experience here in the US. It's the everything else that goes on. So I'm so, as an with our season, it's very regimented as far as I know where I'm racing at home from October right through to April or May even. So my calendar is basically set. Whereas over here, so because I didn't follow a national series, I stayed in the Tennessee and Kentucky area. Over here, you have your choice of, especially in the category that I'm running over here, you have your choice of 5 to 10 tracks that you can go and race at. And, on a Tuesday or Wednesday night here, we're sitting in the shop and then we're looking at, okay, so what tires do we have? What series do we want to go do? Because different series run different tire compounds. So we're looking at that. Then we're looking at just a regular dirt track show. So it wasn't a particular series that I followed. It was a lot of winging it. I've called this whole time I've been here. I've said, we're winging it. We're winging everything because you've just got so many choices as to where you want to go. And if you want to follow for the car owner, a prize purse or tire compounds or whatever you want to follow, you've got your choice of what you want to do. So the options are endless. And then that's a learning curve for me because I wasn't given a schedule prior to coming out here. So I had nothing set in stone as far as I knew I was going racing and I knew I was going to be able to go racing multiple times a week. But it was very foreign for me to not have a schedule set out, from July through to September and me know exactly what tracks I'm going to be at, where and when. I guess you could do that, but the issue with your tires that are left over and the compounds to run whatever series you want to run or follow, for that Wednesday night or Friday night or Saturday night. And so it's like I said, it's been very foreign for me, and that's been a learning curve, but it's been a whole lot of fun because a lot of the time you don't even know what other competitors are turning up. Depending on what series we were going to, we didn't know, who was going to turn up. You roll up to a track and, there could be 18 cars, there could be 35 cars. So, right. Yeah, it's been interesting. It's been a learning experience, but it's, like I said, I've had so much fun.
So is this where your car owner lives? Is that why you're in the Tennessee, Kentucky area? Is that why you ended up there? Okay. All right.
Yes. So he's based out of Tennessee.
Okay. All right. I figured that's why you ended up there because there's all kinds of places you could go and race as much as you are there, but I figured that must be where the car was at. Yeah, for sure. So, So are you a planner, Veronica? It sounds to me like you're like me. I have a list. I have this. I'm a planner. I need to know where I'm going to be when as much as possible. And I can be flexible, but I also like to know the plan. Is that similar to you?
I like to know that there's a bit of a plan, and I get that from my mum. So my mum she loves to have a list written down, loves to have a plan. So, but I can be very much a wing it person. It's just in the sense of racing cars, it's unusual to not have a plan. But again, that's because we weren't following a national touring series. So regardless of whether you're doing dirt track or asphalt racing, if you're doing a national series of some sort or a touring series, the dates and that's what you would stick to. But that was never the plan for when I came over here. I knew that Tennessee, Kentucky they've got a hotbed of local drivers who are super competitive here, and I knew that that's kind of what I wanted to race against in this area, is just to get my feet wet in late model racing in the US.
Yeah, that's so fun, and you understand this because you said it, but you're very fortunate that you're able to do that because so many people can't. And
Yeah.
you're, and you're old enough to appreciate all the things that you're able to do. Whereas, younger kids sometimes don't understand, and then they look back when they're 30 or whatever and say, wow, I was really lucky that I got to do that. So I'm glad that you're a little bit older to where you're soaking up every moment
Yes.
of your trip
Yeah.
and all your experiences, not just on the racetrack. And so I think this is probably going to be the trip of a lifetime for you in many
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah. Definitely, definitely. And you're so spot on. So when I did come in my early 20s, it wasn't that I wasn't appreciative. I knew what I was doing, in my early 20s, and I knew it was something very cool, and it was something that helped shape my life because that was the first time I had moved out of home. First time I didn't have mum cooking me dinner, so I had to find my feet like quite early on. And more in the regard of back then you didn't have the camera on your phone, or like little things like that. I say that to people. So if I ever whip my phone out and I quickly take a photo or quickly take a little video, it's because I didn't have that in
Mm-hmm.
when I came over to do my indie stuff back in the early 2000s, because that wasn't a thing. So now I
Right.
try and I always try and appreciate it, but now, I always try and take photos with people, and as silly as sometimes I might feel saying, hey, let's get a photo, like I do it because I didn't get that when I came
Yeah.
and did some really cool stuff with some really cool people back in my
Mhm.
early 20s. So that just wasn't an option then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think nowadays it's so common for people to be like, "Hey, let's get a picture." That's so normal. And that's normal life. So I don't think anybody probably
Yeah.
thinks anything about that for sure.
Yeah.
So do you help with your car setup? Do you work on the car? Or is that pretty much what's left to the owner?
My
Did you
husband,
did you hear my
he
question?
definitely is a big part of my program back home. Yes, yeah. So
Okay.
I work on my own stuff back in Australia. My husband's a big part of my program at home. He took on, so in this class of racing, dirt late model racing, your shock absorbers are a primary component. And he took that on. So he's my shock guy. So when I came over here, he came over for the first weekend of my racing in the US, and that assisted me as far as team dynamic and me learning this car owner. So me learning Josh versus bringing my husband, who he already knows how I work and how I operate at a racetrack, right? Because he sees me from time we get up to the time we end up getting back home. So he sort of was the buffer for that first weekend, just while I'm figuring out how I work as a driver with a new car owner and a new person that's essentially going to assist setting the car up with me. So what it ended up being is I worked hard with Josh on setup of this car, and dirt track racing, your setup is changing a fair bit all throughout the night because you're chasing the track. So
Mhm.
it's not the same all night. And I got thrown in the deep end a bit with this trip because I was so used to having a crew guy there. And then this trip, it was just myself and the car owner most of the time. And then during the night, just before the night would start, we'd have a couple of crew turn up. But I really had to step up as far as what I was doing during the week, especially with the shock side of things. So the maintenance and prep of a car, I'm fine with because I do that at home anyways. But as far as the shock side of things, which I have this much understanding of, I really had to step up because I was the one who was trying to work it out with the car owner. on my own. So, there's nothing wrong with that, and it's made me grow as a driver. That's another one of the things that can only make me better. So it's just something, like I said, I got thrown in the deep end, and I knew that was the case coming over. But it's just, when you actually have to do it, then it's
reality.
keep your head above water.
Yeah, it's reality for sure. So, Veronica, have you ever had an oh no moment on the track or at the track where you've like, oh no, I can't believe that just happened, and then you had to fix something or something crazy happened? Do you have any fun stories, anything along those lines?
Well, I don't know that any oh no moment is a fun story.
No, probably not.
I've definitely, dirt track racing can get a bit hairy at times. So I've definitely had moments, that's for sure. And when it's crucial moments, like just during my racing season in March at my home track was our Australian title, or sorry, not our Australian title. It was a week after the Australian title, and we had about 48 guys there racing, and it was our nationals, and I was running second in one of my heats, and just slid, I just hit my mark the tiniest bit wrong, and the car went into the wall, so there wasn't much room between where we were running on track. So in dirt track racing, early in the night, you can kind of race anywhere, but most of the time you'll hear people talk about how the track moves up, and which means that the ledge to lean on gets closer and closer to the wall, and the ledge very early on was quite close to the wall, and I was running up there and just skipped it wrong, and it sucks the car into the fence, and we say we knocked the right front corner out of the car, which means the right front corner took most of the hit, which is your suspension components. So as soon as we went from running second to having a DNF, it did not finish, and then that just hurts you for points. And we still qualified for the main event, had to go through a last chance qualifier, but we still made it through. And yeah, definitely, that's probably the most recent oh no moment that I can think of. But over the years, I've definitely had a lot of them.
Yeah. The more you race, the more those things tend to happen. That's for sure, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, what keeps you coming back to racing? I mean, you told us how old you were. You're in your early 40s. You could be doing a lot of different things, but you continue to focus on racing. And no, it's not your career, but you focus on it because it's your passion. What keeps you coming back? Is it the people? Is it the adrenaline? Is it what is it that keeps you
We'll,
coming to the
we'll,
racetrack?
we'll say all of the above, but for me, I went through a period where I was racing when I came. This is when I came back from the US, actually, in my early 20s, and I was racing because I didn't know any different, and that's probably not the right reason to go racing. But then when you have that time out, like I said, I had that time out. I had 2 surgeries on my back in that period of time, and all up, I had about 5 years out. And I think that's when things kind of get put in perspective. So when you're forced or choose to have some time away, you either are okay with it or you miss it. And I missed it. And the thing that keeps me going now is I feel so incredibly comfortable doing what I'm doing. Not comfortable in a race car because you've got to be on the verge of uncomfortable, but I don't know, I'm just in a phase of my racing career where everything is just falling into place, and I've had some cool opportunities these last few years, and I'll just keep rolling with the punches because at some point my body's pretty yeah, I've had a few injuries, and obviously a decent back injury over my racing career, and my body, I know at some point, I know it's probably not far away, that my body isn't going to want to do it anymore. So I think that's a part of what's making me enjoy it. And because I'm enjoying it so much, I'm comfortable, and I'm just in this weird stage of my career where everything's dandy, and it's really cool, and I'm taking it for what it is. And that's probably the biggest thing, is I'm just taking it for what it is and trying to enjoy every moment of it.
Yeah, that's good. You have to do that. What's been your proudest moment in all of your career?
Mm.
There could be more
um
than one.
yeah, I my proudest moment, I'm going to say, is at 21, packing my bags and flying to the US on my own, I reckon. And I say that because I grew as a person so much then. Like I think I said earlier, I had, I'd never been away from my parents. I love my mum and dad, my family just so much, and I'm very close with my family. So to pick up and leave and go to the other side of the world, and at that stage, I'd probably not even been away from my mum and dad for more than a week. So to pick up and leave and come to the US for 3 months was huge. And I think I just grew so much as a person, like during that period. And I reckon that's, I did some cool things in that period of my racing career, and met some amazing people. And that's because I wanted to give it a shot. And I think there's a lot of people who say that they want to do it, but not many people will actually do it. I think, people will come up with whatever excuses they want that make them feel a bit better about not going for something. And yeah, I think, actually packing up and getting on a plane and heading over was pretty cool.
Yeah, and that takes a lot of confidence, and or maybe crazy. I don't know which, to just
Yeah.
be like, oh, it's going to be fine. I mean, I've talked to some women that have moved from California to North Carolina. Well, that's a big move too, but it's
Yeah.
not like going across the world for sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so will you be coming back? Do you think?
Look, I'd love to. So we've myself and Josh, a car owner, we've had a couple of little chats, but we're very fresh into finishing up what we've just finished up. So we're only a day into actually having some time to have a breather, because it's been a bit full on. It's been a bit, the schedule's been a bit crazy. So we'll have a chat, and I'll go home and enjoy my summer of racing. And if the opportunity comes up to come back again, then absolutely.
Yeah. I hope you get to come back, because I'd love to meet you and come and watch a race. I just think that would
Yeah,
be
yeah,
that would be so fun. So
yeah.
before we go ahead.
No, I was going to say, just I love coming over here. This place is the US in general has always just sort of felt like a home away from home for me. So it's everyone that I've ever met over here has always made me feel incredibly welcome. So it's always been lovely to come over here. And it's been too long since this trip from the last one. So yeah, I've got to make it a bit closer in time now.
Right. Don't wait so long to come the next time.
Yep.
So Veronica, tell me how we can follow you on social media. Where would I go to watch how your race season's going in Australia?
Look, my primary stuff is all on Facebook. So if you search my name, Veronica McCann, and you'll see Red Hot Racing on there as well. So it's Veronica McCann, Red Hot Racing. That's pretty much, I know social media plays such a big part in things, but I'm of that age bracket where, you know, social media isn't a massive thing for me, but I love being able to share I always say my little journey. So I love being able to share my little journey. So if you have listeners or that, follow you that have Facebook and want to follow along on Facebook, then that's where I do most of my, updates and little bits and pieces.
Okay. Yeah, because I'd like to keep track of what you're doing. It's going to be winter here, which is not
Yeah.
necessarily a slow time for me either, because oftentimes once the racing gets started, the drivers and the people that I want to interview are busier. So in the winter
Hmm.
time, it does slow down a little, but I still want to keep track of you and what you're doing. And did Red Hot Racing come from your beautiful red hair?
Yeah, so I had my nickname back home in Australia. I did not give it to myself; it was given to me. So, my nickname, obviously, people call me Ronnie, short for Veronica. So my nickname at home is Red Hot Ronnie. And then when we were forming our sprint car team back when my family was forming the sprint car team back in my teens, late teens. And I had that nickname. Red Hot Racing became so it was just RHR. So a lot of people at home call me RHR, and then that fit in with my nickname plus the race team. So that's how that all came about.
Yeah, I figured. I love your red hair. Back in the days when I used to color my hair, my husband loved when I colored it kind of an auburn red color, and so
Okay.
I finally gave up and just let it be what it is.
Yeah.
But that's, yeah, we both love red hair, and my grandmother had bright red orange hair, and my mother always wanted one of her daughters to have that color, the auburn, the red,
Yeah.
and none of us got it. So,
So
but
no one in my family has it. I'm the odd one. I think, I'm three generations from the last redhead in my family, and it comes from I think it's my dad's side. So, and then I got this as I've got older, the colors changed a little bit, but I got this very deep auburn red, and everyone. I just remember as a kid, it was so annoying, but everyone used to stop me if I was at the grocery shop with mom and want to touch my hair, and yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So it's been
well,
a thing, but now I love it. So as a kid, I used to
right.
used to not really like it, but yeah, now I love it.
Yeah, it's beautiful for sure. So, Veronica, is there anything we haven't talked about that I just grossly looked over, missed? Anything we haven't talked about that you would like to share about yourself, your racing, anything at all?
Look, I think we covered my racing. I'm very fortunate to be able to work within the industry as well. So, I actually we've got a racetrack in Perth, Western Australia called the Perth Motorplex. It's a facility, a beautiful facility. So it's a facility that houses a drag racing strip and a speedway track, and it's just when I say world class, I mean world class. Like, yeah, even before I started working there. So I actually only started working there last September, um, but have raced there for many, many years. And, it's a fantastic venue, but now I get to work there. So now I look after. I'm learning the speedway management side of the venue, and it's been very cool. I come from the corporate world, corporate sales, and I've run high performing sales teams before, and this job that I'm now in is hands down probably the most rewarding job that I've had, as far as you get to map out a season and plan these events. And for the speedway side of the venue, we run about 30 odd events during a
Mm.
season. And when you see them come to fruition, and especially the big ones. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the High Limit Sprint Car Series
Oh,
that's here
sure.
in the
That's
US. Yeah, so you would have watched that. Yes. So we had High Limit International. So it was the first international high limit round. So, and we had that at the Perth Motorplex, and it was a 100,000 to win race. So that was the highest paying speedway race in Australia. So we pulled that off, and that was almost a bit of a teary moment when the final night came around, and all the planning that had gone into it. And I was only a part of the planning from the September, so there was a lot more planning that went on to me starting there. But even in that period of time that I had been working there. Very, very cool job. Like I said, to watch these events come to fruition, and see them play out. Pretty damn cool. So yes, I'm fortunate enough to be able to work within the industry as well.
So you're racing and you're working in your passion. And yes, I've heard of the Perth Motoplex several times. I've
Okay.
interviewed I've interviewed other ladies from Australia, and so I'm very very familiar with that. And High Limit, I'm very familiar with. Not only do I watch it religiously, but my friend Lori Cutter works for volunteers with Racers for Christ, and
Okay.
her husband is on the medical team that travels with them. And so
Okay.
I get to see her and him, on the TV and things back and forth when they're broadcasting. So that's kind of fun. So that's one of I know those drivers, and that series is way better than I do World of Outlaws. I have to say, just because
Perfect.
of what I'm watching. Yeah, for sure. So, well,
Perfect. Yeah.
Veronica, I have really enjoyed listening to your story, and you know, hearing all the things you've been through, done, and coming to the States. I just admire you for, maybe if you'd have been a little older than 20, you might have thought twice about it. But at 20, you think you can conquer the world, and so to come and follow your dreams is something
Spot
that I
on.
think we need to encourage all young people, girls and boys,
Yeah.
to work hard and follow your dreams.
Yeah.
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 Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for being on. And if you just hold on a second after I record, I've got a little information for you. That's it for this episode of the Women's Motorsports Network podcast. We hope you've been inspired by the stories I shared today and feel more connected to the amazing community of women in motorsports. Remember, whether you're behind the wheel, in the pits, or cheering from the stands, your story matters. And together, we're driving change and celebrating every milestone. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who loves motorsports as much as you do. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram for updates, behind the scenes content, and more incredible stories. So until next time, stay inspired, stay connected, and keep racing through life. This is the Women's Motorsports Network podcast, where every woman's story is worth celebrating.